So the big question is this: how are real estate investors who don't have a ton of free time, don't have access to off-market deals, and didn't start life on third base, how do we grow a real estate business conservatively to support our families, finally leave the corporate rat race, and build a legacy? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. I'm Ed Matthews, and this is Real Estate Underground.
This is the Real Estate Underground podcast show number 54. Greetings and salutations, Real Estate Undergrounders. This is Ed Matthews with the Real Estate Underground podcast. Today is an exciting show for me. Selfishly speaking, I was just telling my guest Travis Watts here offline that it's a really sneaky way to meet really accomplished people having a podcast like this. So, Travis, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Like I said, I've been stalking you for quite some time, so it's nice to put actually a human being on the other end of this conversation.
Likewise, Ed. Thanks so much for having me, and thrilled to speak to your audience here today.
Yeah, thank you. So, Travis, I know you have quite a following online in terms of mentoring your partners and students and people that are just looking for help. And I know that professionally, you've got you play a pretty big role at Ashcroft Capital as well. So, let me step back and let you introduce yourself, and then we can get into this.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. I think that the mentorship kind of comes from just my own experience with real estate investing. And when I went from doing single family homes, like a lot of us get started with, and I was doing the flips and vacation rentals and whatnot, I was introduced to a couple mentors out of a real estate investment group in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And they were telling me that they were full-time passive investors. And I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know what a limited partner was. I didn't know what a syndication was, but it happened to be exactly what I needed in my life at that time. And the more I started reaching out to other people and to all these programs, I couldn't find a lot of mentors like them, right? Most limited partners are not in the public eye. Right. They want to remain anonymous, things like that. There's really not a lot of coaching programs and things for passive investors. So I kind of made that my mission after I got rocking and rolling with it for 7-8 years now as a limited partner, and just really wanted to provide, through webinars and through podcasts and through blogs and writing and social media and that kind of stuff that, what a real estate private placement even means and what a syndication is and what those benefits are. And frankly, just pros and cons to those. So that's kind of the personal side of the journey. And then one of the groups I had been investing with for years was Joe Fairless at Ashcroft Capital. So I came on board to help him launch an investor relations arm for that company earlier on in their, riding the wave up. And now I'm director of investor education. So finally able to really hone in and focus on the educational aspects of passive investing. So like you, I have a passion just for mentoring and helping out other people, helping people build a lifestyle on their terms, and teaching people the true benefits of passive income and cash flow, which is not what we're marketed to, most of us anyway, growing up. Right. That's not going to be a dinner conversation with the parents or something that you learn in school. So that's the other part of my mission, is to help make that wider known.
Yeah. So, Junior, tell me about your dreams and aspirations of becoming a passive investor in real estate. So no parent to no child ever, right?
No child ever. Yeah, no, we're taught everything about equity, right? It's all about buy low, sell high, buy a stock at 10 and hopefully it goes to 15, or put money into an IRA. And when you're in your 60s, hopefully you have enough money there to live on, but very little about passive income.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I've learned from you, and in fact, if you've seen any of the things that I've created, we think very similarly about is, it's not about the money. Sure, the money's great, but it's about freedom, right?
100%. Yep. 100%. Yeah. And I learned that early on, and I'll give you my actual example. So I worked in oil and gas for many years, and I worked out of state. I worked overseas. I was never home. I worked 14-hour shifts, 7 days a week for usually 2 to 3 weeks straight. Awesome. So I had no life. I couldn't date. I couldn't even have relationships. I never saw my family. I couldn't really go on vacation. It was terrible and it was miserable and it wasn't sustainable. And I really got caught up, to your point, in that money game, right? It was a high income job. I got a lot of overtime and bonuses and all this kind of stuff, but I had no existence. I had no purpose. I had no life. So the passive income, as I started accruing more and more passive income through saving and then through investing in real estate in single family and multifamily, it allowed me to step away from that career and that kind of rat race lifestyle so that I could actually pursue things that I wanted to pursue just for reasons that I had for doing it. So, the first thing I did is I went to go work for a large brokerage firm and I got a Series 7 and 63. I wanted to learn stocks, bonds, and mutual funds because that was something I felt I was lacking to be a little more well-rounded in the investing space. And once I got the knowledge there, again, I had the ability to quit and make a pivot and not have to worry about, am I going to pay the mortgage or the bills, right? Because I had the passive income. That led me into more real estate ventures. That led me to Ashcroft Capital. And so, 100%, it's about freeing up your time to pursue the things that you love and enjoy. And my philosophy is to outsource the things you don't enjoy using passive income. Right. This last month, my wife and I, we just got a house cleaner, just to use a simple example. So whatever that may cost, a couple $100, you can make an investment that can generate cash flow. You can use that to then pay for a house cleaner to where now your weekend's freed up. You don't have to spend it cleaning the house or landscape or you name it. So anyway.
And frankly, your time is invaluable, right? I mean, you can calculate your time by, looking at what you made last year and divide it by 2,000 hours and figure that out. But, the thing is that those are investments, right? Hiring the landscaper, hiring the cleaning person, hiring a bookkeeper, virtual assistant, you name it, right? And it positions you to be to utilize your time in its highest and best use, right? And wherever that goes. So you said a couple things I'd like to unpack. So first off, you mentioned oil and gas, and then you moved on to and you were investing in single family. I think I heard you say that as well. And then you've also invested in the stock market, mutual funds, bonds, and so on. So you're, from an investing career perspective, you've got a wide and deep knowledge base to operate from. So first question, I'm curious, what drew you to real estate as opposed to, passive income investing in like the oil and gas space, which, is a little more cyclical, right? But totally. but a little bit. But as compared to say, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and so on.
Yeah, great question. So funny story. What initially kind of got the wheels turning, despite the books I had read and, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the things that a lot of us read to get us into real estate. I had read those as far back as high school. And then I got this house in Fort Collins, Colorado, and it was about 1.5 miles from Colorado State University. I had just graduated college, different university, and purchased this place knowing I was going to rent out a spare bedroom in this house. And my mortgage was like $641 a month. It was like $95,000 home or something like that, a little townhouse. Yep. Well, I was getting $600 a month from a roommate. So I was essentially living for free after college. And what got the wheels turning is me thinking, A, I didn't have to work for that money. And B, what if I could scale that up somehow? Like not have 100 roommates, but how do I get 600 a month times, 50 different investments? Right. And so that's kind of what sparked it. I took a lot of different pivots along the way, doing flips just because the market I was in, the timing, the purchase price, it just made sense. There's not always a great time to be a house flipper. Today might be one of those times, but I was hitting 2012, 13, 14, and the market was just rocking and rolling, man. All you had to do was make a purchase and sit on it for a year, and then you made money. Right. So I did that. And then I really started honing in more on cash flow. So the thing I did after flips was vacation rentals. And I started realizing that the cash flow was substantial, but the problem was it took so much of my time. And then when I ran the numbers of hiring that out, at least in my circumstance, knowing what I knew at that time, the numbers kind of quit working for me so much. It was, Yeah, yeah. And so that's why these passive investments made a whole bunch of sense to me. I could diversify across the nation, even internationally. I could be in self-storage, mobile home parks, multifamily, single family, ATM machines. I could be a hard money lender. I started realizing how many different opportunities exist for passive investors if you're looking for cash flow. And so that's kind of how that evolved. And the stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, they play a role. Everybody's different. Can't give anybody financial advice, but thing about the stock market is a lot of times historically it's overvalued. There's a lot of hype and a lot of just fluff in the market. So I don't like to overpay for things or have things slide 20, 30, 40, 50% down at any given time.
Great.
That being said, when we do have big crashes, it is an opportunity, right? Especially if you're investing in things that pay a monthly dividend or something like that, and all of a sudden the yield went from 5% to 10%. That could be an opportunity. So I'm not an anti-stock market person or anti-bonds. It needs to make sense. And I'm always looking for a risk-adjusted return. And real estate's got great tax advantages. You can use leverage with it. You can be passive with it. You can get monthly cash flow from it. You can amortize loans and have, tenants pay down your debt. It's just amazing in so many different ways. And so that's why I've made that my foundation for investing. About 80% of my whole portfolio is centralized in real estate, most of that being multifamily.
Okay. And so the when you say most, I'm curious, when you look at real estate, does obviously flipping, it's a little dangerous these days. We're talking here at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
So tread lightly there, folks. But in terms of other asset classes within real estate, are you still in the vacation rental space? Do you look at, you mentioned self-storage, you mentioned a few other asset classes as well.
That's a good point. So I would be in a passive way. Haven't found an opportunity yet that's made sense there. I am not going to go back to doing active real estate myself. Just personal lifestyle preferences. My wife and I, we love to travel. And, historically, we've moved quite a bit. And it's just hard to be tied down to one area for us.
Right.
And it's just not our preference. So to your point earlier, my whole philosophy is, you do you as far as your highest and best. A lot of people who are limited partners are doctors, dentists, attorneys, lawyers, whatever, professional athletes. They're out there doing, what makes them the money and what gives them the fulfillment actively. And that's cool if you want that to be real estate and that's your niche. But passively, you can invest and you can elevate your income up without having to sacrifice more time, effort, and energy. And that's really the beauty of passive income.
Yeah, I mean the what was it, Einstein that said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest, right?
Yeah, eighth wonder of the world. There you go.
Right. So I'm curious. Obviously you've had a lot of experiences, professionally, and I assume personally as well. You also mentioned a couple of mentors that you've had, and fortunately I've had a few of my own, and it kind of fell into two buckets, right? One was don't do this and here's how you fix what you're doing, or the other is take this path and here's the potential payoff. So I'm curious, in terms of the folks that you've had in your life that have given you guidance, what was the best advice you ever got, and frankly, who gave it to you?
Yeah, that's a great point. Best advice I probably got from one of my in-person mentors was double down on what's working. And so another quick backstory, from high school, I used to detail cars and small airplanes. We lived in like a little fly-in community with an airport in the middle of it. So that's I was started out as an entrepreneur and cutting grass and doing odd jobs and stuff. And from there, I went to school for something completely unrelated. I wanted to go tour with bands and musicians. I was, a musician, a drummer, a singer and stuff. So, I branched out and did that kind of stuff for a while. And then I launched an audio rental company and an audio mastering company. And I had launched a clothing line at one point. I'd done all these little small businesses. And this particular mentor came around, I want to say maybe 2009, maybe 2010. And yeah, it must have been 2010 because I was already in real estate. And the only thing, if I really looked at it fairly, that was working for me financially speaking was the real estate. It was getting that $600 a month passive income. Everything else was going negative. I was losing money hand over fist. So I decided real estate, and that made all the difference. I actually took that advice and said, fine, I'm going to cut out all this fluff from my life. I'm going to centralize right here. That's where I'm going to spend my time and energy. Started reading books, finding more mentors, getting involved in conferences, things like that, listening to podcasts like this. And it just kind of snowballed, you kind of become what your focus is, right?
Right.
There's a saying about that.
Yeah, there is, right. Where energy flows, something like that anyway.
Yeah, Tony Robbins, I think.
Yeah, right. So in terms of the your focus in passive income, most of that is multifamily. So, when you look at multifamily as an asset class, what are some of the things that you look at as a passive investor to decide if it's a good fit for you?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
A motivated seller just filled out your web form. If you call back within 5 minutes, you're nearly 4 times more likely to get that seller appointment. But delay your follow-up by even just 10 minutes? Forget it. You're toast. Ella Vista Connect calls that lead back in 60 seconds, qualifies them, and schedules your meeting. Find out how much slow follow-up is costing you. Free calculator at ellavista.com/underground.
Yeah, great point. Well, because I live on passive income, I like monthly distributions. I like monthly reporting, and so when I look at deals, I'm looking at really 3 categories. I'm looking at who's the operator, what's their experience, track record, is this what they do full-time or part-time, and how long they've been doing it, all that good stuff. I look at the market, where are people and jobs locating to? Is this a good market that's growing and diversified? Tenant landlord laws, taxes, stuff like that.
Sure.
Then I look at the property itself. Is this actually a good opportunity? What's the age of the property? How much deferred maintenance does it have? What are the comps? What's the rent today? What could it potentially be? And one of the primary things that I look for is a value add business plan. Almost in every deal that I do, and it's because that was my upbringing. Every deal that I used to do, including the very first house I ever owned, including every owner-occupied home that I've ever lived in, it's always had a value-add component. I've never bought some new luxury, high-end, custom-build thing. It's been a pre-existing product that was outdated, that needed some work, and so you fix it up and you force equity. And the reason I like that is because of times like today and markets going in cycles, you can't always rely on the general market conditions to just boost things up. Things don't go up forever, to your point. They have cycles. Most assets go in cycles. So when you have a 30% margin that you can force appreciation, that effectively gives you a 30% buffer for a softening market. So hopefully your worst case is that you don't lose money. You just have to do some work, and then the market softens up, but then your asset strengthens up, and then you end up at least plateauing and not sinking down. And so I relate value add to everything in life. It was part of what my parents instilled in me in say buying a car. Yeah. They never ever bought brand new cars, and they would always persuade me against even looking at new cars. And they would say, go private party, negotiate, find a discount, find a deal, find something that's like mismarketed or just got posted, and work a deal, fix up any problems and issues with the car. It's probably going to be an ugly car, but you can fix it. And then, I've done this so many times in life where we buy a car and put 30, 40,000 miles on it and sell it for more than what we paid for it. It's insane. And most people only think about car buying as losing money. Right. So you can apply this to a lot of stuff in life.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, so you and I are very similar, cut from the same cloth, in that also a value added investor on this end of the conversation. The thing with real estate that always had drawn me in was, the fact that you could actually touch it. Right. And that it's something that you could physically and economically affect value, whether that's being really good at managing costs, being really good at improving the property so people would be able to, be interested in paying a little bit more for a nicer place. And the fact is that it's one of the things that I was always frustrated by, in the stock market, for instance, right? So, I'm going to take my dollar and I'm going to invest it in real estate. There are things I can do, paint, flooring, saving money on the trash removal, whatever, that will directly affect the value of that, as opposed to giving the dollar to ABC Corporation and hoping the CEO knows what she's doing or he's doing, right?
100%.
And
Yep.
there is a space in our portfolio mix is very similar. So there's definitely a space for those types of investments, but that is not what I intend to live on a daily basis. My investments in the stock market, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the buy low, sell high, it's not like that's a bad strategy or there's anything wrong with that. It's just highly out of your control. It's highly speculative. I mean, you got to understand if you're an investor or a speculator, and a lot of people don't understand that difference. And so, these stocks, we'll take one example today, just because I was just watching the news before this. Tesla stock's like 70+% down this year, and it's just crazy because you get both sides of the argument every day. Why is it, as high as it is? And then people saying, you don't understand, this is a innovative technology company with so much potential, but then something happens and then it doesn't even matter, right? The bubble pops. And so it's just, I can't imagine doing the traditional IRA 401k thing and then just having to hope that, man, the year that I retire, please don't let there be a stock market collapse, because it's completely out of my control. And if you're invested in stocks that are going 50% down and stuff, I mean, you may have to go right back to work that way. So I kind of just rewired the system in my early 20s to mid 20s, and not telling anybody what to do, not saying they should subscribe to this, but
what works for you.
I started getting rid of my IRAs and my 401ks and things that trapped me till age 60 plus, or didn't produce any kind of cash flow. So I could start investing privately for cash flow today so that I could actually retire early and have flexibility throughout my life and not just set myself up to be 60 or 70 to have those benefits. So that's what I chose to do. But, we're all different.
Yeah, and it puts you in a position where you're not tied to a desk, right? You can operate with one of these little iPhones or Androids anywhere in the world and be able to make decisions and handle your business, as opposed to being, strapped to a desk, hoping that your retirement will be ready when you turn 65 or 70 or however old you're going to be. Right.
It's changed so fast with technology. It's crazy. And I was just having a conversation. I have 4 nephews. They're all reaching the college age, and I've got 2 enrolled right now in a public university. And I was like, man, take a year and just look around at what's going on, start an online business, try something. But that marketing is fierce. It's hard to get across. Nothing against college. I mean, I went for a couple of years, but in their situation, they're going to be probably coming out of this with $100K in debt and maybe a job that pays you 50, 60K a year, and they're going to have a hard time. So we'll see.
Indeed. So hopefully their uncle can help them out. So, and you ask, I'm older, I'm in my early 50s. And, you ask my peer group, or even your peer group, how many people actually use, now that you've been in the marketplace for 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years, how many of you actually use your direct degree? I was an English major and a mass communications major, and I'm in real estate. So a little bit, but not a lot, right?
Right. Well, every company is going to train you to what they want you to know. It was funny when I worked for the brokerage firm, you go through the formal training and you get your Series 7, 63 and whatever. And the first thing the instructor said as we returned to the classroom was, everything you guys just learned for the last 4 weeks, forget it, because this is how we run the show. Right. And so a little bit discouraging.
You just learned theory. Now we're going to teach you practicum, right?
Right.
Yeah. So in terms of how you learn, I mean, obviously you run an education team, and you're an active mentor and coach. But the leaders tend to be readers, right? And reader is a kind of a squishy term, because that can mean audible books, that can mean podcasts or YouTube videos, or tangible books. But so I'm curious, how do you consume information? And and a follow up to that is, what are you paying attention to these days?
Yeah, good point. So when I started really realizing the value of books, that was probably, I mean, I've been a reader a long time, but when I started, there was one book I read years ago. It was, and I guess I'll share it. It was Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright.
Yep.
And it was as I was first getting into real estate. And I paid like $20 for that book. And literally within 2 years, I'd probably save maybe $50,000, give or take, in taxes by learning something new, a practical thing that I could actually apply that actually resulted in that kind of savings. That really got the wheels turning. And in 2015, I made a goal to read 52 books in the year. So one book per week. And I did that, but I don't recommend that because it's like drinking from a fire hose. It was a ton of information. You can't possibly retain that much information, or at least I can't. And so I would scale that back to maybe, 12 books a year would be plenty, I think, if they're really fine-tuned to what you're wanting to learn. So I've always been a big book person. Wrote a couple. My first book I ever wrote was actually in high school, trying to help out peers with GPA. And then I wrote another one on single family when I started doing that stuff, but not New York bestsellers by any means. But then I got into Audible a lot. I really did get into the podcasting, not just being a podcaster, but listening to podcasts. And then I got into actual face-to-face mentorship. And that's really what I do the most today, is interacting with actual humans. And books are great. Podcasts are great. The problem is when you read a book, especially an older book, and then you get to that last page and you think, okay, but what about 2023? What about the Fed and interest rates right now? What about a recession, right? You start coming up with all these questions, right, and there's no answer. Unless you can reach out to the author and they're willing to give you their time. So mentors are kind of that next step, right? So build your foundation through books and podcasts, then find an in-person mentor who is doing or has done what you want to do successfully, and reach out to them. And that's really what I've done, paid and unpaid. I mean, pros and cons, but my first two mentors were unpaid. They were just wealthy guys that would give me 15 minutes of their time here and there. So you don't have to bug them and get crazy about it. Just have a phone call.
Right. Or a cup of coffee, right? I mean, I had a mentor when I was in the technology space. I had a CFO of a company who I'm to this day, I'm not sure if he saw something in me or he took pity on me. It was one of the two probably. But I had launched a consulting firm coming out of the tech space. And once a month I would buy him breakfast at the Newton Marriott in Boston. And I would spend 10 minutes kind of recapping. Here are all the amazing things that we're going to accomplish in the next month, 2 months, quarter. And then he'd spend the next 45 minutes basically saying, here are the 19 things you're doing wrong, and here's how to fix them. And, but you got this stuff right. Yeah. And, just having someone tell you the truth, the unvarnished truth,
yes,
is huge, right?
Absolutely.
Surrounding yourself with cheerleaders is wonderful. And when I need to feel good about myself, I'll go buy my mom breakfast, and we'll have that conversation about how wonderful I am. She's my biggest cheerleader, and that's awesome, and I adore her. But when I need somebody to say, look, here's where you are today, and if you want to get over there, here are the steps you've got to take, or here are the things you've got to avoid. Right? Invaluable to have somebody tell you the truth like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just take advice from the wrong sources. There's probably 90% that you should just tune out. And that includes your neighbors, your friends, your family, for the most part, when you're talking about, this big goal that they don't have themselves or that they haven't done. And that's the point. You have to go to the source of someone who has done that and who will give you candid, constructive feedback, right? And so, to your point, your friends don't want to hurt your feelings. Your family doesn't want to hurt your feelings. If anything, I remember my family in 2009 when I started investing in real estate. I remember asking them, and this was a mistake, should I start buying properties? Right? The answer was absolutely no. Right. You are nuts. We just lost half of our money on our house. You're crazy. This thing could go down who knows how much further. You're catching a falling knife. What do you do? So thankfully, I didn't take that advice. I did ask that advice from the wrong source. But, a lot of wealthy people get rich in recessions. So that's the truth. I just didn't reach out to the right people.
Right. I mean, just look at the companies that were created in past recessions: IBM, Microsoft, Oracle. Huge companies, right? Yeah, it's funny. I asked the same question of a couple of folks in my family, including my parents, and every single one of them were like, "Are you out of your mind?" And
Yep.
you and I started about the same time, and fortunately, I didn't listen to them either, so that's good. They love you, they love me, they love you, but
Yeah, they're just trying to protect you,
their intent is good. But it comes down to, like, whenever I was looking at hiring like a financial advisor, right? I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to hire one that drove a better car than I did, or
Mm-hmm.
lived in a nicer house than I did, because then they knew something I didn't know, right?
Yep.
If a financial advisor drives up in a Hyundai and I'm showing up, in whatever I'm driving, I'm going to think twice about hiring that person, to be honest, right? Because
Yep.
right, because I always tell my team here at Clark Street, if I walk into a room and I'm the smartest person in the room, we're all screwed, right? So surround yourself, that it's that old axiom: you're the sum total of the five people closest to you, right? It's
Yep.
because those are the ones you listen to.
100%. It's a
Right.
great point. Very true.
Right. So in terms of the things you're consuming these days, I'm just curious, what are you paying attention to? What books are you reading? What are listening to? What podcasts do you listen to?
Yeah,
That's not a self-serving question.
it's evolved. One thing I'll say, I never read fiction.
Yeah.
And I'm always like a how-to guy. If I can't take away a practical thing out of anything, including a movie, a documentary, something, I just don't do it.
Right.
So with that said, historically, it was a lot of building the foundation for what I do today. It was the how-tos of real estate. It was the ABCs of cash flow. It was that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I've kind of surpassed that. So what I'm looking at now, what I'm reading now, the last book I read was Atomic Habits. And so I'm just trying to better efficiency and trying to grow more as a person, and always trying to expand my context, because I'm not the smartest guy. And I know that, and I never will be. But, again, if the average person reads one book a year and I'm doing 12, I'm 12 years ahead every year.
Right. And the beautiful thing about books is, in a lot of cases, it's the author, it's a decade of the author's life that they're compressing into
Oh, yeah, man.
pages. And so it allows you to take a quantum leap, especially if you can grab a gold nugget, here and there in that book. It allows you to take that big jump forward and kind of skip over some steps, right?
I mean, life's it's a big puzzle. No one has all the answers. Some people have quite a few answers, but not all the answers. And so that's exactly the approach I take. When I read a book, it's not like, my goal isn't to try to read word for word, beginning to end, page by page, or it's not to do it in a specific time frame. It is just to extract 1 to 3 practical things that are going to improve my life or the lives of others. And that's really it. Yeah. And sometimes if I get those early in a book, I'll just bookmark it and I'll come back to it later. No need to finish it right now. I want to go practice those things. Right. And yeah, that's exactly it. I love that.
And that's a really key thing you just said, right? Is, it's funny you mentioned reading 52 books in a year, right? I challenged myself to do that in 2022.
Okay.
The thing, and I didn't get there. But for a different reason. So I'm an active reader, and what I'm looking for when I'm reading a book or listening to a book, I do a lot of audiobooks. If I'm expecting myself to retain that, it's never going to happen, right? Because it's just like you said, drinking from a fire hose. It's too much.
Yeah, it is.
So what I do is similar to what I think you just said you do, is that you find that gold nugget. And then I turn around and I apply it to my business or my life, right then and there. I'll stop. That's a good idea. This fits right here in my business, and we're going to make that work, right? And then I go back and see if I can find other nuggets. So, being in that ambition of reading a book a week turned into 2 to 3 weeks, because I'd stop, I'd apply something, I'd go back,
yes,
read more, apply that, read more, apply that. Pretty soon, I've read 28 books instead of 52. But that's okay. Right?
Yep. 100%, man. It's, we can only focus on so much at one time. And you can think of it like, Imagine watching this like 2 or 3 hour documentary and it shows you a million ways to make money, right? And so by the end of it, you're overwhelmed. Where do you even start? Which one do you choose? It's too much to where you almost get an analysis by paralysis.
100%.
What very few people do is just pause on one idea and say, again, I'm going to double down on what's working, or I'm going to go deep on this one concept and really hone in on it. And so that's what I've done with cash flow investing. And I never dreamed there was so much content and knowledge to be had on just such a niche subject that almost nobody understands or talks about. But you really can create an entire career and lifestyle off just one thing like that. But very few people go deep enough with it, right? So everybody's the headline screener and
Right.
not really digging into the details.
Reading the bullets and then that's it, right? Two
Yeah.
you didn't read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that just being able to create cash flow to support your life, while you may or may not be a millionaire by doing that, you have created freedom, right? The second that your cash flow, your passive cash flow eclipses whatever salary you have, you're free, right?
Sure.
And you can build wealth through appreciation and forced appreciation and doing other things, side hustles and whatever. But that key there of having the cash flow, creating that cash flow so that it supports you, potentially in perpetuity, is compelling, right?
The thing is too, like for those thinking maybe you haven't started that journey yet, or that seems overwhelming, or hey, I'm going to need millions of dollars, I'm nowhere close to that. You can start though, to the example I gave earlier, with one investment of however much, 25K invested at 8% a year or something, and then you can use that 150 a month to start bettering your lifestyle right away. If you don't want to just keep compounding and compounding and compounding, which is a choice, you can get the house cleaner, you can get the landscaper, you can go get your car detailed, you can buy health food with that, you can, whatever's going to help increase your lifestyle. So that's the encouraging part, is that there are benefits almost immediately to starting that journey. You don't have to say, oh, I have finally 1.25 million invested at 8%, and that's 100K, and that's my salary, and I'm going to leave my job. That might take you a decade. Who knows? Took me about 6.5 years, but I went really aggressive with it. I did a lot of things, and I was very frugal and, self-disciplined. And that was a different time in the market cycle, but it can be done.
Sure.
I firmly believe it. It's just how much do you want to commit to that, or do you want to commit to that?
And what responsibilities you have, right? I mean, I started investing in real estate. I already had, I was married. I already had our first child. I don't know if you know this, but babies are expensive. And
I do know this.
Yeah. And so, and the bigger they get, the more expensive they get.
Yeah.
And so, it took me better part of 9 years. So almost a little more than 8 years to be able to create that cash flow, to be able to step out. And so, it's not a race, and you can go faster, but, I find a lot of people like you and me, that's about right.
You want to take it in steps, and I'll explain this to your listeners in this way. So there's like imagine, the food pyramid, right? But turn the pyramid upside down. So the smallest portion's on the bottom. So this is kind of the financial hierarchy, if you will. So you start with self-sufficiency, and that's just that you can self-sustain yourself. So you have a job and you're paycheck to paycheck, but at least you're covering your bills. Okay, that's kind of level one, not including people with debt. And below this level, we're just starting on building. Number two is stability. And that's where you've eliminated a lot of bad debt, if you had any, like credit card loans or high interest rate loans and stuff like that. So you're a little more stable. You've got a little bit of a cash cushion, an emergency fund, stuff like this.
Yep.
Then flexibility comes when you've got more of a nest egg or some cash flow investments or things like that. And you can have flexibility. You can choose, hey, my boss is really pissing me off and I hate this culture in this company. I'm going to switch and go to a different company. I might be out of work for 3 or 4 months, but this is going to better my life. And I have the flexibility to be able to do that. So this is where it starts getting kind of fun. Yep. And then the next step above that is the financial independence. To your point, when you have enough assets that are generating enough passive income or cash flow, or if you want to look at it from an equity perspective where you could withdraw a certain amount every year and not run out of money, that's financial independence. And above that, is financial abundance. And this is what you see with the billionaires and the Zuckerbergs and the Bill Gates and this kind of stuff. They end up giving a lot of their money away because you can never spend it. You don't need $100 billion. There's only so much food you can eat, only so many places you can travel, only so many clothes you need. And so that's the whole spectrum. And so my mission is to try to help people get to financial independence, and if nothing else, at least to a flexibility lifestyle where maybe they could switch to part-time work instead of full-time, or retire at 50 instead of 65, or something like that.
Yeah, go have a life, right? That's very admirable, and knowing the track record of you and your organization, I'd say you're well on your way to helping a whole bunch of people. So, congrats and thank you.
Yeah, well, you bet. Yeah, it's been fun to watch Ashcroft grow. I came on pretty early as an investor with them, but they're $2.5 billion under management now, and almost 50 communities. It's crazy, man. So they went vertically integrated, all kinds of stuff. But they're a great team, great group to work with. But I work with a lot of groups in the industry, so there isn't one perfect place or investment.
Right. So Travis, I'm curious, when you're not talking about real estate or traveling with your wife, what else do you like to do? How do you spend your time?
That's all I do, man. No, our main thing is travel. We were just out in Turks and Caicos, and we had to cancel a couple trips to Bali and to Costa Rica, which we're now putting back on our schedule. That's our main thing. Around where we live out by Walt Disney World, and we've got a 1-year-old, so we're going to start kind of doing more Disney stuff coming up here shortly. But we just love the simple things in life. We live a very humble existence. We go on walks, we go on bike rides. We just like the warm weather. We go to the beach, stuff like that. That's our days off when we're not traveling, working, or doing some kind of conference or event.
Yeah, and I can tell you, parenthood's absolutely the best thing you're ever going to do. It's amazing. And
enjoy. It already has been. Yeah, it's amazing.
Enjoy every minute, because I guarantee that 1-year-old, you'll blink and he or she will be asking for the car keys and will be walking out the door, at age 20, like tomorrow.
Yeah.
It'll go that fast. So Travis, I've really enjoyed having our conversation today. Thank you for your time. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about you or some of the things you're working on, what's the best way to get in touch?
Sure. I put my calendar out there for anyone and everyone, accredited, non-accredited, young, old, passive income, multifamily, whatever. You can go to ashcroftcapital.com/Travis, and that's my calendar, or LinkedIn, Bigger Pockets, Travis Watts, WATTS, or Instagram and Facebook at Passive Investor Tips, which is also my podcast. If you want to tune into that on YouTube, it's called Passive Investor Tips under the Best Ever podcast.
Excellent. Travis Watts, thank you so much for your time today. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, and I hope to meet you in person sometime soon. I'm sure we'll be inhabiting at least one. I know there's one conference you're probably going to be at, and I'm probably going to be there too. So I look forward to shaking your hand.
All right, Ed. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you, Ed.
This has been the Real Estate Underground Podcast, a Clark Street Capital presentation. Thanks for joining us. If you're enjoying the show, please remember to subscribe and share it with your friends. If you'd like to learn more about Clark Street Capital and our upcoming projects, please join our investor club at clarkst.com/join. Until next time, happy investing.
This has been the Real Estate Underground. Don't forget to subscribe. It helps us grow. Until next time, Undergrounders, remember your real estate journey begins with a simple step forward. Now get to it. Bye for now.